it's so cool what can happen. So everybody agrees, I think, that progress in society is both inevitable and really good. The problem is individually, you went to university for X. So you're an expert in X, and you're kind of busy. You want to golf on the weekends. You want to, like I want to execute my 35 to 45 years of work. I want to retire comfortably based upon the big effort that I made when I was a kid or in university. And if you keep coming, you progress guys keep coming along and saying, well, I got to learn new things and change how I feel about people and learn new technologies. You're exhausting.
Welcome to the Enterprise Intelligence Podcast with ShinyDoc CEO Jason Cassidy and VP of Customer Success Davey Slimmon.
Thanks, Steve.
Hello,
Davey.
Hey,
I got a couple of topics this time around that are kind of related to our geography. So
interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm going to hop in first. So my theme today really is because we talk about information management, information governance, and these types of things. And it's good when we can identify things that real life cost companies money, when real life things happen based upon their tech and their choice of how they manage their information and how they distribute that information. So the first one, Air Canada chatbot.
Right.
This is fantastic. And so
do people know the story? I don't know if people know. Do we have to?
Yeah. So I'll give the quick story arc. Please check it out on the news. It'll do slightly better job than I will. But here's the thing. So Air Canada, lots of other major airlines have these things called bereavement fares. Yep. Meaning somebody from your family dies, you're not normally a traveler. Right. So here's how you get a lower fare. And I think they even did it in Seinfeld, where you have to get the death certificate and that kind of stuff. George did that in Seinfeld.
That does seem very Costanza-like. Yep, for sure. Yep.
He totally did it. And that's one of the things that kind of made the story a little bit more interesting. So a gentleman in, I believe it was 2022, asked the chatbot about the bereavement fare.
Right.
The chatbot gave him two pieces of information saying, here's how you do the bereavement fare. Okay. And it also said, if you want to read more about the specific policy, kind of like I want to read read your terms and conditions of your credit card, click here. So the guy didn't click here. He just followed the exact instructions of the chatbot. And then, of course, it didn't work. He didn't end up getting the reimbursement. So the instruction was, I believe, to buy the full fare and then collect the information and then submit a claim, and then they'll just pay you back. Well, of course, the claim is rejected because that wasn't actually the process. Right. Again, I don't know what the process was. That's just what the chatbot told him to do. So Air Canada, rather than just saying, this seems completely reasonable, right, we'll give you the discount on the fare. Right. Instead, force the guy to sue, or I don't know exactly how they reconciled it, but Air Canada put up a defense that said that the chatbot is an independent legal entity that should be afforded its own its liability. Whereas, and they also said, in fairness to the chatbot, it gave you the wrong information, but it did point you at a link that you didn't click on that had the right information. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So anyway, obviously Air Canada lost this case, and they lost a lot of reputation points on this. The last thing I'll say.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, it also, when you combine the idea of people are doing reasonable things with an expectation of your product. In this case, a chatbot is reasonably giving you decent information. Yeah. Uh-huh. And then they take reasonable action. There should be a fulfillment part of your business that looks at that and goes, I got some discretion here. It's a couple $100.
Right.
Yeah. let's just do this.
Let's do the right thing by this person who's lost a loved one. Right.
Yeah, like there's all sorts of additional circumstances. Right. So I think of like the grocery store chain where my older son works, and in people who work at their help desk or at the information desk or whatever it is have a lot of discretion for reasonability. Right. So somebody comes in with a reasonable request, even if it seems a little scammy, they err on the side of just do the thing that will make the customer walk away without being pissed off.
Yep.
So there's a few $100 worth of discretion, which is the same amount here.
Yep.
And every day they resolve, they have, 19 or 20-year-old kids working at a desk who make reasonable decisions. So anyway, it's all that put out there is obviously Air Canada is looking to save money by having chatbots instead of people calling agents. Yep. It should be more convenient for you, blah, blah, blah. There's all sorts of great things. But without some governance around and accountability around the chatbot, it just opens you up to real life reasonable liability.
Yeah, I mean, look, how far do I go down the pit of talking about the terrible decisions that all sorts of airlines make every day when it comes to the consumer experience and the experience of their customers? But man, this one is just kind of, chef's kiss in terms of just bad decision upon bad decision. And at numerous points along the way, Air Canada had the opportunity to do the right thing and chose not to. Maybe because they didn't want to open the floodgates and have, a larger problem on their hands. I don't know, but I don't think that that's it. I think that the moment you allow an automation, I'm not calling it AI. The moment you allow an automation, whether it's a chatbot or an AI or some other set of business rules that you've created to take the place of human discretion, or as you say, discretionary spending, even, allowing agents a certain threshold under which you can just say, okay, well, to have a great customer experience, to keep this customer and keep things moving in a positive and constructive direction, we're going to give every agent, X $100 a shift or day or week or whatever it is to just make problems like that be solved, and choosing not to do that is a choice. And it's, to your point, ultimately one that can really end up hurting the reputation of the company and the reputation of the organization. We're not talking here about a choice that an automation or a chatbot made that caused physical harm or danger or injury, but it's reputational, it's embarrassing. And then like this is a story that here in Canada anyway got a lot of legs, and I think I saw that it made kind of international news. And it's just not what you want. You don't.
Guardian. Yeah. It was Washington Post. It was BBC News. It's everywhere.
So why in the world would you choose to at the various off ramps that you had to do the right thing? Why would you choose not to do that? And I think that bringing it more in the direction of AI, which of course is very hot right now. These are things that people are going to have to think about the not just the quality of the data that feeds the chatbot or feeds the AI, but rather the outcomes that may arrive from it. And just even having like some kind of training wheels on it, human training wheels on it to step in and kind of do the right things. Well, yeah, our chatbot, it had a tough day and we're sorry about the advice you got. Here's your refund. We're sorry for your inconvenience. It doesn't seem that hard.
I'll point out something that I believe to be true is when you take somebody like Air Canada, and I'm going to throw Air Canada and insurance companies into the same mix in the following way, and maybe even nuclear power plants and other places. They take the safety and security of what they do massively seriously. Okay. I do not feel for a moment that Air Canada skimps on safety and security.
Yep.
Like, obviously, you could have Boeing Max or whatever have whatever technical issues it has beyond their control. That's fine. I'm just going to separately say, as far as maintenance, safety, making good safety choices, getting you there on time, having staff who are nice. And it's when I'm on the plane, it's Air Canada is not a bad experience. It's, in fact, I would say, in some cases, a premium experiences over alternatives.
It pains me to say it sometimes because we've all had some rough ones, but I would agree, on balance, it's a great experience.
Yeah. So the reason I mention insurance companies or others is the idea of they take the rules as far as how they can invest the money and these types of things, like their core business of bringing in policy money and then investing it wisely to create a business that then offsets the payouts that they have to reasonably make is great. So unfortunately, I believe they think that that's their business, is operating a safe flight or operating a great investment arm.
Sure.
Whereas the business itself is just the customer experience, is not what happens at the best of times. It's what happens in the average time or the worst of times.
Yeah.
And these companies keep getting reputationally burned by what we would consider to be easy stuff.
Right.
And anyway,
and they're doing all the hard stuff really well. Launching a metal object from Toronto to Heathrow safely every time is the hard part, probably.
Holy cow!
Hurtling through time and space across time zones and getting you there without exploding is probably the main thing, right?
Yeah. By far, it's the technological engineering wonder that it is, and then you got to somehow make a buck on that, and that's where it gets weird. And so anyway, my point is, when we bring in tech. The whole idea is how to nail the customer experience.
Right.
And unfortunately, that's not the goal yet. And it causes real reputational harm. The goal right now is how do we eliminate humans from the equation? Humans are not a capital expense. Humans are an operational expense. How do you just get rid of them is the question that everybody asks. And until the chatbots can be held to a standard where they can make reasonable decisions that aren't going to embarrass you, they need to be supplemented. They need to have little bit better than saying, here's how bereavement works. It needs to actually say, here's the document that you need to read, and you should probably call an agent too if there's any confusion, rather than even trying to answer the question.
Yeah. I mean, I'll go a step further and say we've had sentiment analysis for, I don't know, 20, 30 years. We can analyze computationally. Computers can analyze the sentiment of text. Is the person who's writing angry? Are they upset? Are they sad? Are they happy? We've been able to do that for a long, long time. The bots, the chatbots, the agents can equally be equipped to say, oh, geez, like we're now heading, because of the sentiment analysis I've done on this chat that we're having, we're now at a point where we can actually probably kick you into somebody else, like a human who can really solve this. You've lost your uncle. You're very upset. Let's have a human being deal with this part who has the discretion to waive your fee for this or blah, blah, blah. So again, it's a choice we're making. And I totally agree. Like with the technology that's available to us, we can start to be smarter about this. And the funny thing about what you're describing, the example I'm describing is, it's not really, in my mind, a high cost thing. As I say, some of this stuff has been available for a very long time. It's borderline commoditized. So why aren't we doing it? And we should be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the minimum goal is, did the person go away?
Yeah.
They asked the question, and did they go away? And it's the threshold should be, did we give them a not as good of an experience as a human, because I don't want the human experience all the time. When I get the food delivery, sometimes I just check the box saying, don't even just leave it.
Yeah.
I'll come out and get it. I don't want to talk to you, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So I like the fact that there's the robots every once in a while, but I agree that at some point there needs to be a threshold for now until the bots get better.
Yeah. 100%. If you'll allow me a little anecdote, it really reminds me of when I was a kid, teenager. I worked in a ton of different restaurants. I was like a cook and dishwasher, and eventually I was a waiter and a bartender. Anyway, I worked with a guy who was a little bit older than me, and we were really, really busy. We were slammed one night, and our lobby of people waiting to get tables was just packed. The restaurant was full, the lobby was full of people, and of course it's all families and kids, and it's just kind of chaos. And this guy who was, I'm 15. This guy who's like 17, a little bit older than me, says, Dave, come on, let's you and me go make a bunch of garlic bread. And I was like, okay, yeah, well, I don't have an order. Like, who are we making this for? Like, let's go make a bunch of garlic bread. It's busy. I was like, why is this guy asking me to make a bunch of garlic bread? We go and make, 6 orders of garlic bread, takes no time at all. And Craig, his name was, Craig takes these 6 orders of garlic bread out to the lobby and says, hey folks, we're sorry for the wait that you guys are having right now. You guys probably are hungry. You guys want some garlic bread. These have cheese. These don't have cheese. Cost pennies. It cost
the highest margin item on the menu.
Yeah. Cost nothing
Totally.
to do that. And every one of those people was pretty happy. Every one of those people kind of calmed down. They waited for their table. The kids were happy. Like, the smallest things that you can do really have a big impact when it comes to the consumer experience. And, airlines would be wise to pick up on that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Super cool. Nice. I love that. It's a great topic. You're right. You did tip your hand on, you were mentioning that you were, we talked about this, and I didn't know where you're going until you brought it up. And I'm glad we talked about it.
Yeah. Cool. What do you got for your first?
So mine's, I'm gonna try and draw a connection, although it might be a little bit of a stretch. I've been for a little while now, probably at least a year, a big fan of a woman named Sinead Bovell, and I don't know if you know who I mean. She's kind of a futurist / pundit. She shows up on, CNN and all these big U.S. Shows, news programs to talk about AI, among other things. And she's actually from Canada. She's from Toronto, I believe. And she was on recently on one of these stations, CNN or MSNBC, I can't remember which. And she was talking about AI in the context of diversity, equity, and inclusion, which we also know, Gartner and Forrester are all doing these predictions for 2024 and beyond. And one of the big things that they had in addition to AI being so hot is that this is the year where diversity, equity, and inclusion really becomes kind of a core of a lot of organizations' priorities. Anyway, she said in this session that I was watching, AI is a reflection of humanity and a reflection of history. It holds up a mirror to society, the present and the past. AI is a conversation with our history, and the data that AI has been trained on comes from the past. So what we see in those data sets does not have to be what we perpetuate. And that was a quote. I tried to quote it as closely as I could. We here at Shiny Docs, we get very wrapped up in topics related to data quality. We obviously spend a lot of time working with our customers about data that they can get rid of, data that they don't need any longer. And, we'll do everything we can to make sure that AI isn't making decisions, tying it back to your Air Canada thing. We'll do everything we can to make sure that AI isn't making decisions about how tight a screw on an airplane wing needs to be. But when it comes to things like diversity, equity, and inclusion, shouldn't we be looking at data quality as well from the point of view of making sure that the AI isn't getting trained on data that is based on historic biases or historic, principles that do not support diversity, equity, and inclusion? Anyway, I'm rambling a bit, but I'll pause and with the simple statement that yes, I think we should.
Yeah, well, it's so. Let's enter politics has entered the chat.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, it's fine. So I'm going to address this as a good ADHD kid who kind of focuses directly on, I want information.
Yeah.
That's all I want is information. I don't like opinions, and I like progress.
Yes.
I like to see something that has always been be always a little bit better. So how do you do that? Also steeped in the idea that most people don't care about making things better. And quite frankly, that makes them terrified. It makes them feel like they might become obsolete. Right. And so it's like back in the early, it was 1971. And I want to get this name exactly correct, because this is, again, very political. 1971, there was a gentleman by the name of Renaud Campos, who said, who invented a story. France was, they occupied Lebanon, or it was a French colony or whatever, and they had influence around the Middle East and other places, and I don't know whether it went well or not. We can ask friends from Lebanon if we want, but that happened, post World War, during these types of things. Yeah. And then at some point, everything kind of normalized, and France was France, and these other places became more independent. And then there became a migration of people who wanted to move west. Right. They wanted Western opportunities and these types of things. It makes sense. So what Renaud Campos started saying, he created this new thing called the Great Replacement. Right. Saying, and it implied was, because we kind of treated these people not great necessarily, they're coming back, they reproduce quicker, they are, they're going to come and try to do the same thing that maybe we did to them. Again, I'm oversimplifying, but this was an invention. It doesn't exist. Right. Like, this whole Great Replacement thing doesn't exist. Right. However, it was used as kind of a political tool in order to shift policy, this type of thing. And it's like, and the reason why it was used as a tool is because it's like, intellectual tools don't work for a society that doesn't want to change. Yeah. We know that. Yeah. What works is emotional tools. Well, that feels right. Like, I see more immigrants every day, and it feels right. It's like, and every once in a while, when I see a story that says an immigrant did a crime or something, that just reinforces this Great Replacement idea. Unfortunately, the data for the people who want to perpetuate it, the data just doesn't support that. People show up to your country, and they want to adopt your culture and that type of thing. Yeah. Sure, they're going to still celebrate Diwali or whatever. Whatever fun thing that they do as part of their culture, I don't care. Yeah. Like, I'm not going to force anybody to celebrate Christmas or Ramadan or anything else. So let's forget those things. But anyway, unfortunately, all sorts of policies and decision making happen around the world based upon these ideas that somebody's coming to take the thing that you've got, and things are going to change. Mm-hmm. So that's how you get redlining in the United States, where certain races are not allowed to live in suburban areas where there was the highest appreciation. That's how you get things like banks not issuing mortgages to particular races, which still happens today.
Right, of course.
And that's how you get things like, the RCMP took a real black eye on this one, where back in the 60s, they recruited CIA operatives to try to bring more guns to minority communities in Canada, so that then they could, demonstrate the efficacy of their enforcement. Right. Awful. Yeah. So these things really happened. Yeah. So our data is not just biased by this. Yeah. And this is where the kind of ADHD scientist in me gets in. It's not just biased. It's not my opinion. Right. It is just, the data is driven by these ideologies, which resulted in certain classes of people becoming more wealthy and certain not. It resulted in the ability to polarize people. And so you cannot use a historical decision-making pattern of a bank. You cannot use a historical decision-making pattern of a
insurance company,
whatever. Yeah, any one of them, because they were all influenced by these polarizing ideas that are intended to just get you to vote a particular way and bring people to power. So
if you're training an AI,
we can't just assume We can't, again, I'm a data guy. I don't just assume that DEI is better.
Mm-hmm.
So prove to me that DEI is better is a good question. And then if we agree on that, then we can start talking about how do we train our AI separately from the prevailing data. So I will throw a couple of pegs at DEI is better in that I want to be able to sell to everybody.
Yep.
I want everybody to have a relative level of wealth. I would like to be able to employ anybody, regardless of race, sexual orientation, whatever.
Rising tide floats all boats kind of thing.
Yeah. Right. Can you sell software? Right. Can you build software? Can you support a strong business?
Yeah.
Truly what I care about. You know what I mean? What you do in your spare time.
Sure. Yeah.
That's your thing.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So that's the goal, in my opinion, of DEI. But somehow it's still biased and it has all these political undertones where DEI is actually a swear word.
Oh, sure.
In a lot of constituencies that we talk
100%.
to. So
yeah.
So anyway, so how do you deal with that? It's like, first of all, you got a lot of people who say, I don't want to put DEI anywhere. It's a swear word. Yeah. Then you have the AI training data being completely biased. Mm-hmm. It is, to me, there's at least two components to trying to fix this.
Yeah, 100%. I'm really glad we're talking about this because what I started thinking about it is specifically in the context of Shiny. You know, we spend a lot of time and energy helping our customers, get rid of Word docs that nobody's looked at in 15 years or, PowerPoint presentations for projects that don't have any value anymore. But this argument that Sinead Bovell was making on CNN or NBC or MSNBC or whatever it was simply that the same task that you're doing around your data cleansing can also be used to at least ask questions about whether the data that we're using to train this AI has some of these things baked in. And is it then not also an opportunity to fix that? Whether you call it, rewriting history, it smacks a little bit of like, don't go back in time and step on a flower because then maybe, pizza won't be invented, don't change the past because, don't change the past because you'll mess up the future. But if
that is the worst possible outcome, also, Davey.
But if you go back in the past and change something in your data in the past, because AI is a conversation with history, and the outcome is a more equitable result, in terms of the the output of the of the AI application, isn't that something we should shoot for? And I think it is. I don't know that, based on what you were saying, Jason, especially around sort of the politicization of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I don't even know that we have the tools yet to even begin that conversation. But I think it's a conversation worth having, and I don't know who's doing that other than people that are interested in ethics and philosophy, almost. I don't know. Just curious to hear, Steve. What do you think of all this stuff?
I think it's an interesting topic for sure. And I mean, one thing that springs to mind for me when we're talking about the inclusion of DEI and basically like AI training models being biased. And again, I would pose this as a question to much smarter men, you guys, than me, but about how is there a way that we can unbias a data like AI training model?
It's to me, Steve, very similar to like a conversation that I was having late last year, earlier this year. We were featured on the cover of the Kitchener Record. There was way more to it than what got published because it went into like a political depth. The idea that using AI to solve a housing crisis isn't just about, can we use a chatbot to issue a permit? Right. That's like step one of 1,000 steps. The important step is to actually put into the model what you want. Yeah. Create training data out of an idealized, the thing that you actually think will solve the problem, not out of historical data. Mm-hmm. Use historical data to train and this is, again, like I'm going to sell Shiny Docs a little bit. We build the training model obviously, as it was.
Right.
Then you can, inside of our Shiny Docs environment, you can change it to the future of your data that you want it to be. That's kind of literally what we sell, is that we got this kind of, we'll call it garbage.
Yeah.
Your data is not garbage, but let's just say because you don't know what it is yet, it just feels like garbage. And then you make it something that you know what it is. And then you test that to see how close it is to your ideal, what you want it to be. And then you make the changes the way that you want it. And to me, that is exactly what needs to be done for housing. You need to identify that probably 1 out of 20 people is never going to pay for their rent or anything like that. That's just the reality. They're not necessarily deadbeats or anything like that. Like we might want to talk. It's just, like if whatever issue that you have, we're not Nazi Germany. We don't want to kill disabled people. We want them to live happy lives and be productive as much as they can. And I'm not saying disabled people are the ones that need this help per se. I'm just just saying that not everybody can, be a fireman or something like that to, just actively participating in the community. So there's one data point, like it's 5% of people are going to need help. Then there is, the majority of people, 70%, I just made that number up, but it feels right, that needs to be able to afford a home that is about 4 times their annual salary. Because then you can reasonably pay it off between 5 and 25 years. And now you've built some wealth, because that's good for everybody. If everybody has a little bit more wealth, then everybody has more purchasing power, and then business becomes easier. And then there might be 30% of people, I guess we're left with 25% of people who can afford, $1 million homes because they're making $250,000 a year plus or whatever. Lots of those people, way more of, the 5 to 70% people. But unfortunately, the way that we've designed, in this case, housing, is we go to builders, and builders are like, how many big, massive homes can I build legally?
Right.
Because they're the highest margin.
Yeah.
And I get to put in sidewalks and all sorts of other things and, make beautiful streets. And it's just the most expensive, highest margin thing. So there's a over amount of these more expensive things, which unfortunately, that 70% of people can't really afford. So they stretch themselves too far. And we create this system. So anyway, tying it back to AI, you put into the model, say, okay, 70% of homes have got to be 4 times the average salary. And in the average salary in Canada is like $65,000 or something like that. So how many homes out there are under $300,000
at this point?
Yeah.
0. Very few.
Exactly. So we done effed up. We did a bad. And how many homes are over $1 million? Like it's lots, probably almost all of them. So you put into the model what you want, and then the model spits out some reality, and then you try to follow the reality. And that's not what really happens out there. And that's how we get into these situations is we're just too quick to let people do what's the most profitable, or, like what's good for business is good for society. Sometimes.
Yeah, almost accidentally sometimes. And I think we're arriving at the same place on this one, that it's funny because it's tied back to the first point about, gosh, this would be helped along by some human beings making the right choices at the right times. Although, so far human beings' track record on this isn't so great either. So we were making bad decisions in this area long before AI.
Well, I mean, left up to our own devices, we will act in our own best interest and these types of things, and it's fine. And that's the whole reason why we need to have these conversations. Is this isn't about an individual who is in a place of power, what is their best interest? It's a matter of just modeling the outcome of the society that you want. So if you want to have a society where there's multiple classes of people and those classes of people don't like each other and it's used for political power, you kind of get what we got right now. But if you decide that you would like a society by which you actually have a reasonable meritocracy, where the likelihood of you becoming a millionaire is not like it's the best way to become a millionaire is to have parents who are multimillionaires. And that's not necessarily, it shouldn't be the case necessarily in the idealized society. the generational wealth thing that keeps accumulating, this power law that keeps pushing it over closer and closer to what we have right now. So do you want to fix it? Or do you just want to wait until society crumbles because nobody has anything anymore? And then there's civil wars and there's already talk of that type of baloney. And it's not baloney. It's the reality that at some point when people are desperate, and it's desperate people who do things, it's not minorities who are criminals. It's not whatever. It is people who are in desperate situations do desperate things. That's it. So if we agree on that and we put together a model for diversity, equity, inclusion, we put down a model for, the housing situation that actually is affordable and reasonable, and then we execute on that model, we'll be fine and we can adjust as we go. But if we build the model and then we ignore it and just keep doing what we're doing, then you get what you get.
Yeah. And I mean, that ties back to your point about, whether you're a person who believes in progress, or whether you want to either keep things the same as they are today or indeed move backwards. It's going to come down to how many people out there want to move things forward and how many people want to stay where they were or go backwards. And I'm definitely in the progress camp as well.
Well, and this is the confusing piece, is that everybody would say they're in the progress thing. You know what I mean? Like everybody's like, we're proud of humanity that 12 people walked on the moon. It's pretty cool. Well, if you believe that happened, but I mean, it's,
oh man.
Okay. But I mean, it's like, we're very proud of the fact that 400,000 people worked on that program across many, many countries. Including the German rocket scientist who switched gears from blowing stuff up to
blowing people into
the stars. Yeah. So, I mean, it's so cool what can happen. So everybody agrees, I think, that progress in society is both inevitable and really good. The problem is, individually, you went to university for X. So you're an expert in X, and you're kind of busy. You want to golf on the weekends. You want to, I want to execute my 35 to 45 years of work. I want to retire comfortably based upon the big effort that I made when I was a kid or in university. And if you keep coming, you progress guys keep coming along and saying, well, I got to learn new things and change how I feel about people and learn new technologies. You're exhausted.
It's exhausting. Why can't I just have some Mai Tais and play some golf? Yeah,
exactly. It's just, and it's unfortunately the majority of people, and this goes back to your majority. I don't believe they're anti-progress. They just don't want to be the progress people. They don't know how. They don't care. They're like, I learned how to do X. I want to apply X, and I want it to be important. And the more you keep talking about your progress, the less important I feel. Stop it. And that's anyway, it's almost definitive irony, I think.
Steve, I'm going to want a copy of this whole thing because my mind is kind of racing right now with some of these things. Jason's consistently blowing my mind right now. So good stuff.
And I will check out Sinead Bovel.
Yeah, I'll send you her details. Cool. She's fantastic. I think
I'm on her website right now. Yeah. It's totally cool. Obviously wildly active.
Yeah.
Out there, so I'm going to check that out.
Yeah, I think she's like a lot of folks in the media. I think one of the things that she does a tremendous job of is explaining pretty complicated things in very kind of consumable ways, which with topics like AI, I think we need. So I think she's a reasonable voice and a very effective communicator. So yeah,
love it. Yeah. Cool. So I'm gonna switch gears. I don't know how to segue to my next.
Okay, that's okay. We can go cold. We can go completely jarring.
So we're gonna find something. We'll find a tie, but it's not coming to immediately. Anyway, so the next one, again, even hitting closer to home. So I'm a University of Waterloo graduate. Primarily, I studied physics and computer science and a few other things. I love philosophy there too. It was great. But so at the University of Waterloo, a young person was buying stuff from what they called an M&M machine. I think it was, a machine that was branded with Twix or M&M or whatever, just what they called the M&M machines. And they, it would give you whatever food or beverage that you would like out of this vending machine. And on the screen, because everything's got a screen now, there was this big error message that said facial recognition error.
Oh no. Okay. Why is a vending machine looking at your face anyway?
Well, that's kind of neat. So let's tie it back to privacy.
Yep.
So privacy specifically.
Yep.
A privacy issue forced the University of Waterloo to commit to removing all of these vending machines. Okay. Yep. So this is the real situation, and really calls into question the who's telling the truth in these things. So turns out that vending machines now do facial recognition.
Okay.
There's pinhole cameras in there. Okay. And even the vendors themselves freely admit that the machine, this is where it gets ambiguous, is do they actually send the recording phone home with the recordings of your face so that we know you and can market to you?
Okay.
They know that you buy M&Ms at 2:00 in the morning. It's Davey. Here's how we're going to change our display.
So this is like collecting marketing data about who's buying Fritos or chips or something. Really?
Yeah, for sure. So that's the concern. But as far as the manufacturers are saying, they go, no, we just collect demographic information. We kind of want to know if you're white, black, or brown. We want to know if you're male or female. We guess your age with this kind of stuff. But we throw away the video of you. There's nothing personally identifiable, which I should we give them the benefit of the doubt?
No.
Don't know.
Go carry on. Sorry.
So the interesting question is, like, the reps behind these vending machines insist that the machines do not take or store any photos or images. But then that makes you wonder, well, what's the purpose of the camera then? Like, if they're not, it's definitely suspicious there.
It just sends back white male with glasses bought M&Ms at 2 a.m. Looks to be, and I'm looking at
looks
Davey
to be
and
sad.
Steve. But no, looks to be sad. Looks to be. I didn't want to guess your ages because that'll make us all sad. Yeah. So, but anyway, here's a situation where it just put this out of business. Like, I mean, the vending machines are being removed. The trust is gone. Kids were going in, putting Post-it notes over, sticking needles into the pinhole camera and destroying it. Oh my God. Like these types. And I don't know whether or not actually anybody vandalized machines, but I did hear that these are the types of things that kids are considering or doing. So it just killed that portion of the business. So when you are not when you are not clear how you are collecting people's personal information, how you are using it, whether or not you are the product or you are buying a product, if you're not clear about that and you don't have techniques for doing that, in this case, it just puts you out of business. Yeah. Like this was a hard extinguish on this, where they've committed to removing these machines.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I've started to see a lot more of, maybe this is anecdotal, maybe you've seen this, I have started to see a lot more company or organization level declarations about the use of your data. Now, whether this is kind of, legit, like, whether this is, kind of some theater. I don't know whether this is theater that organizations are doing this, or whether there's, some real good intention behind it. I'm not clear, but I am starting to see a lot more on, people's public websites. I'm even starting to see, people in their socials, including information of related to how their, customer data is used or kept. And then obviously, if it's not clear how your data is being used, there's always a place, there's always a web page, there's always somewhere that people can go, which I think is like a step in the right direction here, because I think obviously in the case of a vending machine collecting your personal data, that is not even something I would have ever assumed was happening. And now I'm like a little bit horrified. Like, are we really putting little cameras in everything to gather this data so that we can capture market information about who's buying chips at 2 a.m. Apparently that's where we're at. Makes me a little bummed out, but I think one of the things that companies can do and organizations can do is get in front of that by being straight and open about it, to say, this is what we're doing and how we're collecting it. Or you could stop altogether and just deal with the fact that you've sold a bunch of Snickers to random humans and sold chips to a bunch of random humans. Like, isn't it enough that you sold some chips and some Snickers? Maybe, I don't know.
So here's the irony. You ready? And it's so, Davey, when did you get so anti-progress? Yeah, you know what I mean? Progress is being able to anticipate. They do your retinal scan and they walk up, Davey, we know that you want this right now. We've already pre-selected for you this great experience of whatever.
Yeah, and there's a famous, there's a famous to me Simpsons episode where I can't remember the setup for it, but Bart is explaining to his friends, Milhouse and Nelson and everybody, that they're going to have monkey butlers. Do you remember? I can't remember the context of this. They're going to live on an island. They're going to have these monkeys. They're going to train a monkey to be a butler. And then the monkey's going to train all the other monkeys to serve on them hand and foot. And not a word of a lie, 25, 30 years ago, I worked with a small group of people on a project that we called Monkey Butler that didn't get off the ground and kind of turned into just silliness. But, it was going to be essentially this kind of engine for collecting and storing stuff about me that I would personally choose to store on, at the time, this is before cloud, I would personally choose to store information about me on my own computer so that my monkey butler on my computer could do a bunch of things in my life that I either don't want to do or don't have the time to do. And I thought, this is like the most progressive idea in the world. I don't have time to remember my parents' wedding anniversary, but my monkey butler can remember my parents' wedding anniversary and send them a happy anniversary card. They'll even know what year it is and all of these things. And I remember at the time thinking, wow, that's progress. And now I'm horrified by this monkey butler idea. What were we thinking?
Yeah, it's like, hey, I like it.
Should look and see if monkeybutler.com is taken.
Yeah, like, geez, I think of like paying bills and stuff like that, and because I twice a month I go in and I sit down and I make sure that credit cards are paid, bills are paid, or stuff like that. But I used to just pay them immediately, blah blah blah, and I've never got that courtesy from anybody else in return. So now I pay like a credit card bill. I go in right away and set the bank to pay it 5 days before due or something.
I do that.
That
too.
way, there's lots of time in that. So that's a great use of Monkey Butler. Just say, I'm the type of person who wants to pay a bill 5 days before it's due. So in case the payment doesn't go through or whatever, you got a couple of days to reconcile it. You don't want to be offside. And I love it. And then the whole question then becomes, if you want that future, if you want that progress, there's a mountain of privacy concerns, ethical concerns, just starting at the most basic of how do you make it so that you're not this treasure trove of information that can easily be hacked so that people can then do identity theft or whatever. Like there's this hits the, I don't want to introduce a new topic, but I think I might have talked about this before. The Florida idea that they're going to do age verification for social media.
Yeah.
So that you can, we talked about this last time.
Yeah.
And
it passed.
He did it.
Yeah, for sure. And it's the same kind of thing. It's like, okay, totally makes sense. It's progress. Great. Because kids spend too much time on social media, whatever, and it's damaging to their mental health.
Yeah.
I'll grant that temporarily for the sake of this argument. But then who's the expert on privacy that's going to do this damn thing?
Yeah.
Is it going to be the Florida government? Maybe they're great. I don't know. But all I know for sure is now it gives me 1 point to go and attack. And I want everybody's information that does social media. So it's, once you open the can of worms, you need to be accountable for worms. And that's what privacy is. And if you do a bad job, like in this case, In this case, it was pure reputational that just,
Right.
just this vending company, unfortunately, is going to lose 100% of the revenue from the University of Waterloo over this, and maybe everywhere else they have one of these machines until they literally change the machines so that people can see for sure that this machine has been modified so it doesn't track your face.
You know what? I'm going to go a step further and say something that just occurred to me that it's an indicator of how old I am. When you were telling the story about you started the story about the vending machine, I was assuming that students at the University of Waterloo are putting coins into this machine, but of course they don't do that anymore. These are all taps
Yep.
and stuff. So it's even more insidious. It's the camera. It's the are you a man or a woman? Are you a certain age? Are you black? Are you white? And it's tied to your account. They know exactly who you
Oh, for
are.
sure.
So
And they got a hash of your credit card that they assign to you.
yeah. Oh.
And then when you walk into, they can sell that data to people. So when you walk into another store, it's like, hey, this is Davey, and Davey he likes to buy M&Ms at 2 a.m. So market to him this way.
Barf.
It is, yeah. It was. There's a dystopian movie. It might have been one where somebody, like swapped out their eyeballs.
Yeah.
And because wait, what movie is that?
I mean,
Minority
that's like
Report?
a trope at this point. There've been so many movies
Yeah,
like, I'm going to take this guy's eyeballs. And
I think it was Minority Report, but I don't know for sure.
Right.
Somebody, we can look that up. Where that was the total thing. So that they'd walk through the shopping mall,
right,
and a retinal scan would happen, and then they start advertising explicitly to you using your name.
Right.
You want this product, Steve.
Right.
And holy cow, is that kind of cool? It's progress, but man, can that be used in nefarious and awful ways?
Yeah, I mean,
well, I was just thinking that too.
No,
Sorry to interject. From like wouldn't that be embarrassing to discover, like, say, like a foreign country of bad actors obtained your likeness for their facial recognition database from a vending
Right.
machine? Like,
Sure.
to find out, like, it was buying M&Ms at 2 a.m. that got me. Like, I've been so careful at protecting my, PII, and then it was that vending machine got me, and now some foreign country has my face in their database and stuff.
So I'm going to sell some software here. And then we can segue to the last topic. So if you want to deal with this in a sense as an organization, the types of organizations that we work with, law firms to municipalities and this types of thing, we just scan your data for this personally identifiable information so that you at least know where it is. Right. Regardless of whether you're doing nefarious things or not. That's kind of none of our business. That's between you and your local government and authorities and laws. But at least we can tell you for sure. It's like if you've been generating information personally about people from vending machines and you're collecting that and storing it on your file shares or SharePoint or whatever, we just tell you where it is. And then you can make an ethical decision as to how you want to proceed with it. Yeah. So in the meantime, while this social experiment of collecting maximum amount of personal information is happening, the pitch that I have selfishly is at least know what you got and what your vulnerability is so that it doesn't put you out of business when it gets discovered or exploited.
Completely reasonable.
Yeah.
Completely reasonable.
Buy some software.
Buy some software.
Cool. What's your last topic, Davey?
Last topic, I think actually connects back to a few things that we've talked about today, which is kind of fortuitous, I guess. I've been thinking a lot about, and I can't remember how I started thinking about this. I think it was an article I read, and I'll get to the story part in a minute. But I've been thinking a lot about exhaust or waste that organizations produce. The exhaust of an engine or the byproduct of something that normally is considered not useful, and yet there are all kinds of examples out there of organizations using these quote unquote waste components or byproducts for their gain, for their benefit. Classically, you could think of like, in manufacturing, you could sell chemical byproducts. You're building a thing, but there's a chemical byproduct, and rather than I don't know, dump it into Lake Erie, you could sell that chemical byproduct because somebody wants to buy it. And sawdust is a good example. When you're in lumber production, you're making lumber, you can sell. People want that sawdust, and obviously, kind of famously, farms produce manure. If you've got a bunch of sheep or you've got cattle, you produce manure, and that manure can actually be turned into fertilizer and other things, I would imagine. And so it got me thinking about what we think of as like the exhaust of an organization like a bank or an insurance company. What are its byproducts? And I would argue that, one of the byproducts are, this mountain of unstructured data that in many cases might have some real value. And now I'm getting to the story part. I was reading an article recently about a company that I believe was in Cincinnati. I might be wrong about that. 100 years ago or more, they made a special kind of soap that was kind of like a clay that you could use to really effectively clean your coal chimneys. It's like you've got a coal chimney and it's dirty and messy, and they developed this clay that's really good as a cleaner for these coal chimneys, and they made a lot of money doing that. But then, guess what? We got out of the coal chimney business, and oil furnaces and gas furnaces came in, and this company was about to close up shop. They were about to stop. They were like, well, I guess that's the end of us, until they heard that there was a school teacher locally, I think somewhere in Ohio, who had been given some of this clay, and their kids really liked it. What's that clay? Play-Doh. Play-Doh.
It's funny that you say that. That's the first place that my brain went. Yeah. But I'm like, is that clay? Like, to me, it feels like just space rubber plastic.
Billions and billions of dollars of Play-Doh sold internationally. One of the most common international children's toys. You can go almost anywhere on the planet. It's owned by Hasbro now, but you could go almost anywhere on the planet, and a little kid will be playing with colored Play-Doh and building little things like that. And so what I want to try and bring it back to and kind of get us chatting about is, if you think of these sort of byproducts or these things that you think don't have any value anymore, it's like, well, it's garbage. We're out of this business. This is pointless. This is useless. Or indeed, it's like a waste product of something you've made. What's the equivalent on the unstructured data side? Are these the gems inside your organization that you're simply not aware of? And if so, how do you pull that stuff out? Where do you find this stuff?
Yeah, like it's a great mind expanding example of this is when I was at IBM Think in Vegas. I'm going to say 2018, hanging out with Pitney Bowes.
Oh, cool.
And Pitney Bowes, you think that they're the guys who they scan, or you run your check run through it, and they put stamps on automatically and remit the right amount of money to
100%
to the U.S. Postal Service, and they read the right amount of money to Pitney Bowes themselves, because I think they're all kind of rental units that you pay per stamp. And you know what else they're doing?
Nope.
They scan the addresses. So they maintain a database of addresses. And here's the cool thing is they know who has lived at every residence, because you send mail to people where they live or to businesses, so they know where people work. They know who has lived in this building for what amount of time. And then they have the ability, I don't know if they do this, but then you can combine that with other purchasing data or whatever. So you have massive demographic data of who actually lives here now, who historically has lived there now, how much money they make, all sorts of stuff that you can piece together literally by adding that one extra little element of what's the address and what's the name on there, using a wee bit of the most basic of AI to say, is it a name? Is it an address? Is it whatever? And they collected that information, and it's my opinion, and I don't know this for sure, but it's my opinion that they will make more money right now from having that demographic information than they could possibly making a penny off per stamp.
Yeah.
So that's a gold standard example to me of what other data do you have that's just sitting around? But there's within every organization, and I think the pitch is too is like at least examine your data, see what you got, let smart people look at it and say, hey, we could do X or Y or Z with it. It's an interesting idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a business cliche, but the whole idea about the left hand not knowing what the right hand is doing in large organizations. If you think about like a large pharmaceutical or life sciences organization, you've got teams of people probably all over the world working on chemical compounds and medicines and things. That's the example that comes to me where, it's like, well, I'm in Boston and I'm working on this hair loss treatment using the following chemical compounds. And I worked on it for 20 years and didn't get anywhere. And, now I'm going to do something else. And then along comes your IT person or your information management person saying, hey, do you want any of this? Do you need any of this data that you got? This is like 30-year-old data or 20-year-old data about this stuff that you did. And, if I'm that business unit, I'm probably saying, no, like honestly, that we went down that path. We looked at this stuff. It was pointless. Nothing really came of it. But maybe there's some other team on the other part of, the other side of the planet who's working with a similar chemical compound and they're trying to solve cancer or something like that. And they might find the work that you did 20 years ago that bore no fruit whatsoever for your hair loss treatment could have, meaningful and interesting things to say for their cancer treatment. And that's where I think, to your point about like understanding what you've got, understanding where it is, just with terms, with keywords alone, and you can even get fancier with kind of thesaural stuff where, you link terms together that are synonymous or near synonyms. You could actually really find some incredible gems within your organization if you put in a little bit of time investigating and interrogating that data. And maybe that turns into something. Maybe that turns into your Play-Doh or your Pitney Bowes, data, address data. I mean, I'm now thinking that whenever I have to do my passport, you renew your passport and they ask you to list the last 7 places you ever lived. And I can never do that because I can't remember all the addresses of all these places. Apparently I need to go to Pitney Bowes and ask them.
Yeah, Pitney Bowes will just say, oh, Davey, here you go. Yeah. It's interesting. And I think people know this. Like however, going back to part of the conversation where we said is that people kind of don't get progress. They're kind of fixed in what it is that they do. And I'll give a specific example in our domain, like in information management. We got a lot of friends and innovative people who we communicate with all the time at Iron Mountain. World leader in records management. They manage more records than anybody else. And they of course, their customers are saying, man, we want more digital insights from the data. And they have great consultants and they're working with technology partners to get for people what it is that they actually want. And it's great. And they're on this gradient transition that is a push-pull. And I mean, you'll have to go talk to somebody at Iron Mountain to see whether it's a massive success or whether, it's iterative. I'm hoping that it becomes a success in the sense that as society with our information, are we just hoping that, those boxes that are stored become irrelevant at some point before we actually need the data? Or are we going to actually need the data? And, this is the push-pull, the gradient that happens. And I'm of the opinion that it's hard to make that decision without really knowing what the data is. You can't just look at the label on the box. So it's going to be a certainly difficult transition for them, I think. And again, I'm not giving any insight. I love the people that work there. I love the company, and I'd love to. We've worked together in the past. I hope to work together in the future, because I think we all agree their customers want to be at this digital future. We want to be at the digital future. However, the majority of the revenue and all that is, storage and retrieval of physical information. And at what point does that flip? Does it ever flip? These are all things that are guided by this idea of do we know the value of the data? This is me tying it back. The Pitney Bowes thing, where it's obvious the value of the data because they collected and they're like, man, this is smart of us to do that. Yeah. And then when I think more generically of record keeping of somebody like Iron Mountain, they know they want to do it, but it's not as obvious as the Pitney Bowes example as to how to convince people to pay for it. So we're stuck in kind of this mid gradient of we're almost to the point where everybody agrees to digitize everything.
Bingo. The value of the data is at the core of the whole thing. And I think the switch that needs to be flipped is that so much of the narrative, and I'm not blaming anybody, this is just the way it's played out. So much of the narrative has been on the scary risk side of the house. Oh, that you got to get rid of that as soon as you possibly can, because if you hang on to this box of stuff for one day longer than you're legally required to do so, it's risk. It's a problem for you. And we've all seen versions of that story play out, and even people have bought into that, and that is a kind of a thing. But I think that the flip side of it is, what data are you getting rid of that has tons and tons of upside? Tons and tons of upside. You've made a choice to get rid of it because it meets certain disposition requirements, and it checks all the boxes for the records managers. But what if there's data in there that is the opposite of risk? It's opportunity that you're literally just sending to the shredders.
Yeah, it's like, hey, I'm a CEO of a company, and when I think of compliance rules and these types of things, I take them seriously. It's obviously the industry that we're in. It's, however, from a prioritization standpoint and investment standpoint, when somebody comes to me with this urgency of, oh my God, we need to comply with X, there's always a waiting of, well, what if we don't comply with X? So let's just say, example, like this doesn't happen with us. I mean, we file our taxes on time and stuff like that. But it's somebody says, oh my God, we need to do this, whatever, filing of this or that. The question is, well, what happens if we miss it? And they're like, well, then you pay 1% per year, and you might shrug and go, okay, cool. We'll prioritize it. We'll get it done. But if we get penalized a wee bit, who cares? Like, it's fine. With good intent, we're going to act. Yeah. But if somebody comes to me and says, we're sitting on X and we've already found a few people to sell it to, I want permission to go sell it and make you more money. Yeah. It's like,
do that thing.
Yeah. Yep. That's right. We're going to heavily prioritize that today.
Right.
So it's just, it's easy. It's the decision making. And I don't think everybody sees that. They think that compliance is its own reward and you'd go out of business without compliance. And we've kind of said that today a little bit. But the reality is everybody's always weighing, I can only put so much energy into so many places. Making more money at the front of the business is always going to be a higher priority. And if getting penalized means, it's an established penalty with, something that you can afford, then fine. Obviously you don't want to go out of business because of privacy risk, but that's always again, we're back to kind of a gradient of where do you put your energy? Because we all want to make this progress. And if you can come to me and say, Jason, we're going to already talked to 10 customers. We already sold this idea. Need a little bit of investment over here. It's like, yep, done, check. We're moving money from here to there to go do that.
Chase this thing that seems to be working.
Yeah, and we're happy to be a little worse at the back end of the business in order to do that. That's not just me. That's every company out there. It should be the way that you work. You don't want to go to jail. You don't want to be a bad guy. You don't want to do all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, you want to take some calculated risk, and you want to make sure that you're doing the survival of the business depends on cash flow at the front of it, not being the best possible pristine office in the back.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a connection in what you're saying to the whole urgent versus important, and things can be urgent and not important, or urgent and important, or, all the quadrants. Right. So, So anyway, I all I've taken from this whole thing today is I need to go out and get some Play-Doh to play with. I need to never go to a vending machine again. What are the other things I need to focus on?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Yeah, the benefits of simplifying the conversation around these. We heard about a good influencer there.
Yeah.
And of course, we started at Air Canada with the idea that if there's something that you can reasonably do to create a good experience, make sure that you imbue that into your chatbot, not just facts.
Yeah. Covered a lot of ground. This was a good one.
Yeah. Awesome, gang.
Thanks, guys. It was great to chat.
Yeah, we'll see you again next week.
Great.
Enterprise Intelligence is a Shiny Docs podcast with Jason Cassidy and Davey Slimmon, produced by Stephen Schuntz. Copyright 2024. If you would like to learn more about how Shiny Docs can make it easy to organize your content, protect your data, and make your users happy, visit shinydocs.com today.